Today we're going to talk about nail art. We're going to talk about different sort of like soft skills, internal skills that we need to have in order to progress with nail art, to be able to progress in our careers. Then we can make money off of our nail art, become good nail artists, better nail artists, improve in our nail art is a better way of saying it. I'm just using day-to-day terms, but language is really important when we're working on a skill that we might feel we don't have or that we need to improve, right? That's probably the first lesson. But today we're going to talk about accountability. We're going to talk about focus. We're going to talk about implementation. I might show you guys a couple of little skills that I've learned along the way. I'm going to talk about a secret saying that I've held with me for a long time. Since I was in grade 6, maybe 5, an art teacher once said something to me that I've always thought about while I was doing art, and this has always helped me. So stay tuned. They're not in any specific order, but we're going to talk about nail art, and we're going to talk about our internal process of nail art instead of take the paintbrush, put the paintbrush here, do this. Because you can learn that anywhere, but can you learn the internal skills that you need to continue on as a nail artist so that you have a regular practice and so you're not beating yourself up all the time? First step, guys, we need to be accountable for ourselves. What does that look like? And what does that mean? So I think for some people, accountability can mean blame and shame, and that's not a part of the process. Blame and shame and comparison are all things that you need to step away from and understand that accountability means that you are taking accountability for your circumstances, for what you want to do, and then you're going to be able to move forward. So in the sense of nail art, we're going to take accountability for the time that we need. We're going to take accountability that we understand that it might be your day 1, your day 10, your day 365, wherever you are in your journey, that it's not going to look the same as someone else. And when we consistently apply our skill and our knowledge, things will change. This is very important. We're making a commitment. We're making a commitment to ourselves to get better at nail art, to get better at art, to grow our businesses. That's really important. We need to do that, right? So step 1, it's our accountability within ourselves. A lot of times people will look at their art and they will see somebody else's art and they will be like, wow, I'm not good, or I don't have a skill, and then they just stop. But when you stop and when you're negative to yourself about what you're doing, you're essentially just creating kind of a negative feedback loop that's really not helpful. Because when you're doing something like a creative process or anything in life, you need to look at it in a way that it's like energy accountability. So, is it really useful for you to be upset at yourself for not being perfect? Is it really useful for you to call yourself names because you didn't add the gem right? Is it really useful for you to do these things that create a negative energy, that can create a feedback loop within your mind that stop you from progressing in what you're doing? It's not going to be helpful. So sometimes a negative feedback loop can progress you to a certain point, but it's never going to be sustainable because our bodies and our minds, especially our subconscious minds, they don't like to be pushed around. They don't like to be bullied. Like, bully yourself all you want, but at some point the bullying's got to stop. It's not going to work. You're not going to progress in your artistic abilities. Another thing that's important is making a commitment to yourself and making a commitment to your art. And how do you do that? Well, that's pretty basic. Plan out where you can have 30 minutes to an hour a day for you to be able to continue your practice. Art is an accumulative process. You get better with more practice, you gain knowledge, you're able to refine your skill set as long as you accumulate what you're learning. If you're having a hard time with implementing habits, I do actually really like the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Essentially, you trick yourself into learning a habit and being consistent with it. Our brains like to be happy, they don't like to be bullied, and they like treats. So if you can trick yourself into doing something like nail art, like practicing the part of nail art that you want to do, that you want to progress in a way that your brain likes, then you're going to release dopamine. Dopamine is going to make you want to do it again. It's going to be a cycle of gratification instead of a cycle of negativity. That's important. My glasses are slipping off, as usual. You're not going to be inspired every day, and you're not going to want to do it every day. And that's why implementing habits where you feel good about it are really important. In 9 years, I have done a ton of work. I've worked with a lot of different teachers, a lot of different circumstances doing nails. One time I did nails for the government. I just painted regular polish on nails for $100 an hour. It was cool. Somewhere in my province in Canada, there's proof, but I never asked for the pictures, actually. I should ask for them. Some of the teachers I've worked with a lot of teachers from Japan. Before 5 years ago, there was a lot of travel and a really cool place where you could learn in my city from teachers who are coming from Japan. And I've learned from Tati, I've learned from, I forget her name, but I'll add a little picture. And I've learned online through different programs as well. I took a really good course with Nail Daisy and how to make nail art stickers. So I've learned a lot from teachers, right? But the one thing that I noticed is Japanese teachers are really positive. And even if what you're looking at for you feels hard, they were always encouraging that it was easy. So it's like, I'm learning this really complex thing, like this flower, right? And they're like, it's easy, easy. And what I'm trying to say is how you frame something in your mind is how the outcome's gonna come. So if you're like, this is really hard, this sucks, I don't like it, then the outcome's gonna be a lot harder than if you're like, this is not bad, this is, easy, it's easy. The way that you frame things, it's really gonna change your practice, it's gonna change your outcome. Why make life harder for yourself than what circumstance already is? We're always gonna be in some sort of state where there's suffering, pain, etc. Why not just accept it for what it is and move forward? Maybe it's easier for you to feel bad all the time. It's not easy for me. Focus on what you like. For some reason, you may like art, or you want to start doing art. You want to be able to be good at nail art. So focus on what you like within that. Do you like gems? Do you like characters? Do you like flowers? When you focus on something that you like, you're going to naturally have some sort of inclination to move forward within that process. So for me, I really like nature. I really like traditional painting. I have history within visual arts already, and you would think that that would translate so easily to a nail. It doesn't. It's really a lot different to paint on a curved surface rather than a flat surface, and also paint something smaller than a dime or a small coin in comparison to something that's like very big, It's not a lot of working room. So I focused on those things and I was able to progress. But it didn't come without a little bit of struggle, a little bit of pain, I am naturally kind of an unbothered person through implementing a lot of different techniques in my life. However, it doesn't mean that I'm always unbothered, but the most important thing is that you're not comparing your art to somebody else, that in a negative way. Like, we do compare to be able to grow. There are certain circumstances where I think comparison is okay, but the comparison I'm talking about is when you feel bad about yourself because you're not that other person. I don't naturally compare myself in that way, and I've always been okay with being different, or, like, I'm not like, I'm different. I'm just like, okay, whatever, I'm a bit weird. People don't always relate with me, that's fine. I got something to say, you got something to say, let's say it. Same thing with art. My art's not gonna be the same as yours isn't gonna be the same as mine. It doesn't matter if we do the same thing, if we practice every day, it's probably not gonna be exactly the same. So, that being said, we know that we can learn from that. We don't need to be like that person. We can be different, we can be unique, we can have an art style that not everybody likes. Somebody out there is gonna like your art. I know this because a lot of people liked mine, and I don't know, I started from zero just like you started from zero. I didn't have a big following. I've never been super famous on social media for anything that I've done. It's not really what I want. For me, business is consistent clientele, making a profit, and, you know, being very good at my skill. So I'm giving you information on how to be good at your skill, yeah? Selfishly, I think that I'd like to pass on the skill that I have to another person so then they can see the potential in themselves. And hopefully that person will also pass on some information to somebody else, and they will continue and the cycle will repeat and skills will be learned. I like skills that are learned. I don't think comparison is the thief of joy. I think gatekeeping is the thief of joy. Huh? What do you think? So we've talked about not comparing ourselves, and a part of non-comparison is also accepting failure. Failure isn't necessarily what you think it is. For some people, failure is a direct switch off. You know, you turn the light on, you turn the light off. It's like failure, success, or success, failure. You're up here, if you fail, it's off, it's gone. But that's not true. Failure is a way that we can learn from ourselves, that we can learn from our mistakes, that we can grow as artists and people. Many times I've done nails where I couldn't look at them, guys. I couldn't. But later on, when I was able to look at them, I could see where I could improve. You don't need to be perfect, but being open to improvement is okay. I know that a lot of times people talk about perfectionism as something where you're really negative and hard on yourself and and it's bad. And I think that type of perfectionism isn't good. But for me, having a goal, not necessarily to be perfect, but always improving is important. And being open to failure within that. That's something that is really important in order to progress with nail art, is that you're open to failure. You're not always going to do the best set of nails. You're not always going to draw the perfect flower. Sometimes you're going to have to start again. The amount of times where I looked at something that I was practicing on a nail and throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. Keep going. If you don't keep going, you're just going to get stagnant. I hate the word stagnant. I do not like the word stagnant. Like, it reminds me of like icky water or like a dishcloth that's been left on the counter for too long. Don't get stagnant, okay? Always grow, always change, always be open to new circumstances. No matter what kind of energy they hold, being open to circumstances will always change your output, perspective, your art. When you're open to circumstance, open to failure, that's neuroplasticity. So we're also being little scientists. Let's be scientists of our own minds. That's cool. You can change. You can change the neural pathways of your mind. If you're not a neutral or positive person, that's okay. But know that if you want to be, you can change. Circumstance changes with your own belief, with what you decide is what you're going to do. I'm not a toxic positive person, but some people would say I'm positive. I would say neutral. I'm pretty neutral. I find the best way for me to work in life is to be neutral about almost everything. It's not that I feel bad or that I feel really good, it's just I'm in the middle. I like to be in the middle because then there's workability. I sometimes feel joy, of course, but I like to not have too strong of a reaction to most things because too strong of a reaction means you can be pulled either way. And do I want to be pulled either way? No, because that's a form of control. And I don't want to give the control of my mind to things outside of myself. What I can do is what I can do because I like to practice learning about my mind and taking care of it. And I hope that you can too, through learning about how you can achieve nail art. You could apply these things to your life in different circumstances and it will work. You know, another way of how you can look at things is, what if you got good? What if you became a nail art star, huh? Amazing things could happen for you. I don't know. Okay, and we're gonna talk about a story. One thing that I learned through my mom is that I was good at art. She always encouraged me with my art. She was a creative person. That's something that I could always bring home and show her, and she'd be like, that's really good. And that was important. It was a really important process because it's something that I knew I could do, right? Anyways, so I always did art. I remember it was grade 5 or 6. I had this teacher, Mrs. Enzing. She was an amazing teacher. I remember one time she told me something about growing up in a rough circumstance that really hit my heart. Do I remember the exact words? No, but I think that it also, knowing that feeling, helped me progress to be the person I am today. Anyways, Mrs. Enzing, she was my teacher. She was not just my art teacher, she was my everything teacher because it was elementary school. I'm not sure how the school's education system works now, but Mrs. Enzing, she said, draw what you see, not what you think you see. I told that to my best friend once, who is also an artist, and he was like, what are you talking about? So I'm gonna break it down for you. Essentially what I'm saying is that what you think you see is a reference to something that you've seen already, right? Most of the time. So I see a computer, I draw a computer. But when I draw what I see, essentially I see light, I see lines, I see color. And how do I see that? Through a process called refraction. The light bounces off, it absorbs, it goes in, you see it, and then your brain says computer. But if you're able to see the lines outside of the computer, if you're able to see the light that reflects on the computer, if you're able to see the keys differently from the perspective of your eye in a more Paper Mario kind of way, then you're able to draw something in a different way. You could draw a cat that way. You could draw, something else that way. So when you draw what you see, not what you think you see, you're taking out the context of the reference point you have in your mind and looking at it as object. Cream jar, but when you see there's a light line, there's a line here, there's lines around here. Don't be too complex about the process. See it in a simple way. And when you see something in a simple way, it's not as hard as you think it is. Something about art that I've always heard from art teachers and that I also believe to be true is that everyone has the capability to progress in their art. It's just when you've decided to say stop. So for some people, when they're a kid, they think it's not good, they stop. But then for other people, maybe you do possess a little bit more of an internal quality to be an artist and you continue. But that doesn't mean that the people who have stopped can't continue and become a different artist, have a unique style, work in art. Art is something that we can all do. So remember, it's the words that we use to process what we're doing. If you can't do it, then you can't do it. If it's easy, it's easy. If it's hard, it's hard. Whatever you believe to be true is your truth, right? It goes with art. That goes with a lot of different things. Being resilient to your failure is a learning opportunity. It's something that you can do in order to learn. So you could feel you've gone through an unfavorable circumstance. Let's relate it to nail art. You don't like them. I'll show you some of my early work. It's not cute. I don't think it's cute, but some people do think it's cute. Thank you if you think that my early work is cute. Thank you so much. But what can you learn from that experience? How did you hold your brush? What were you telling yourself inside? What products were you using? There's a lot of different ways that you can learn from that experience. Do you need to maybe ask for help or take a class? Maybe you need a new paintbrush. It could be as simple as that. But a lot of times it's the internal process and dialogue that changes how we feel about things. So it's important to understand that and work with that. It's important for you to be a little bit more open with yourself and understand that everything that we do, it's always a work in process. No matter how much experience you have, there's always room to grow. No matter what kind of expert you are, you could also be a student, and we are all students of life and art, and nail art is one of those arts, and I really appreciate nail art, even though, things have changed for me. So Now that I've shared these kind of tips, I want to know, is there any tip that you think that you would implement now that I've spoken to you about this? Is there anything that you could change about your process of learning? That would be cool to know. I would really appreciate it.